guys, welcome back to another video. If you're a brand new viewer, my name is Brittany. This is Brit's Books and Beauty, where we discuss all things beauty related and read some of our favorite books. If you're a returning viewer, thanks again for stopping by and checking out this video, where today we're going to be discussing not one, but two of our novels for this year. I definitely have been a little lax in my reading, and I apologize, but I'm hoping to catch up. So I was able to put behind me both the March and April novels, and I'll be diving into May very shortly. So without further ado, I think we should just go right into it. For the month of March, our book was Shanghai Girls, which was by Lisa C. This book was very challenging for me to read, and not in like a vocabulary sense and like I was struggling to read it, not even in like a content was dry kind of struggle. It really was an emotional issue. So this novel definitely plays on the heartstrings. It follows two female characters that reside in Shanghai, China at the end of the 1930s. And it follows their journey from, happy young women living in China to like through their lives and their journey of immigrating to America. So their father arranges marriages for them, and they initially get married, and then their husbands go back to America and say, pack up your stuff. We expect to see you in a couple weeks. And the girls do not go because they're like, why should we follow two strangers to America? They're gone. They're not coming back for us. And unfortunately, that was kind of a not smart move on their part, because not long after that happened, the Japanese invade China and start to slowly take over village by village, and they make their way to Shanghai. So unfortunately, when these women could be safely with their husbands in another country, they are now on the run from Japanese soldiers who are not treating the citizens of China very well. And so this book follows their journey as refugees running from China, traveling overseas. It tracks, I shouldn't say tracks, because it doesn't really track, but it really gives us a good idea of what immigration looked like going through Angel Island and what things looked like for Asian Americans in America during what I can assume timeline-wise was probably World War II. And it's really unfortunate, very traumatic emotionally reading this, book, and this author does not spare the detail of everything that happens to these women, to their family, there's casualties, there's, really awful things that happen that, are really hard to read. There's no graphic detail. We're not talking like very distinct description of what's happening, but you get enough information that you are fully aware of what's going on. And more importantly, like, these traumatic things that are happening are brief, but the emotional scars that remain and everything that these girls go through, like, you are inside their heads, you are aware of their feelings about everything. And I think that that's what makes it so hard as a woman to endure the kinds of things that these women did, just to seek sanctuary. And even after seeking sanctuary, then the racism that they were put through, in America. And that's tough as an American to read, to that not only is that still happening, but it's extra horrible when there are political things going along with it. So to know that hate can be tied into politics so tightly is just really unfortunate. Not only to be living it, this day and age, climate-wise in terms of politics and, social aspects, things are tough in the outside world, and now I'm trying to get through a book where it's even worse. So, that was really challenging for me, and I am the type of reader that normally can sit down and go. It's tough sometimes to pull myself away from a good book, and while this was a very good book, it was also very hard to read because it definitely made me feel things I did not want to feel. I don't really recommend it if you're doing it for a timeline like I did, because again, that set me back because of how slow going it was for me. It's definitely a good book. I do strongly recommend it for anyone who is really interested in those kinds of, more heavy kind of let's go on an emotional journey type of novels, or those interested in history, I think that would be good. Just know that trigger warning wise, there's some stuff that goes on in here sexually that is definitely unfortunate. So, you know, if you're triggered by stuff like that, maybe not for you, maybe just spark notes it. Otherwise, you know, for people who are invested in a good novel that's really pulls you in and makes you feel, you know, like you're in there, this was a good one. It definitely was. It was just challenging to try to read it in a timely fashion because it was not a book that I can just sit down and go. I definitely tend to feel things a lot and strongly, and so this was a tough one for me in terms of pushing forward and making myself sit down and read at frequent intervals was like really tough when I knew that what I was going to be picking up was probably not going to make me feel very good. So yeah, it was a tough one. Definitely very good. Again, that was Shanghai Girls by Lisa C. My April book was a lot more enjoyable. So the one that I chose for that was The Breakdown by B.A. Paris. I actually just read this in the last week or so. It's very easy to read and allowed me to read something quickly so that I can hopefully catch up. So good, so good. So I have a love for this author, just like my love affair with Hazel Gaynor, which is another author I'm into. B.A. Paris has enthralled me with the 2 novels that I've read by this author. One was called Behind Closed Doors, and I was obsessed with that book. And so when I saw this at my local Barnes & Noble, I definitely had to pick it up. It did not disappoint. It was such a page turner, just like the last one. I was able to read it in just a few short days with focused reading, where I was like, nope, today I'm just reading. It was very easy to get through it. Super, I mean, there are some pages where you're just, I mean, it's like text messages that you're reading. So, you know, it definitely is not one that I would say is going to weigh heavily on you. It is a bit of a thriller, nothing like Stephen King status, but certainly a mystery wrapped up in itself. Super interesting. And I definitely think that if you're just into a really good book that you can read quickly, that you can pull yourself out of pretty easily, I do feel like this was a good one. I definitely felt like once a chapter closed, it was, for the most part, there were some cliffhangers, but for the most part, once a chapter came to a close, it was kind of like, okay, now I can do my laundry, or now I can do the dishes, or whatever it is that I was avoiding by reading. The chapters kind of came to a close enough that I felt like I could go and do something else and come back to it. But because of how good it was, I definitely was able to get some long stretches of reading in without interruption, and I plowed through the book. So, you know, if reading comes easily to you and you're interested in something that's like pretty good and is going to entertain you solidly whilst you read, this is it. This is a good one. This follows a female lead, ironically. A female lead who is unfortunately finds herself in the midst of a murder investigation. She was the last person to see a victim alive before she was murdered, and that's information she does not like share with anyone at first, and that sort of guilt like weighs on her because she starts to think, you know, could I have helped her? In the midst of all of that stress, her memory starts slipping, which like most people would be like, she's just under a lot of stress. Unfortunately, her mother had dementia, and it eventually did take her life. So our female lead starts to have medical, you know, panic essentially, where she's like, dear God, am I headed down that same path? Because she was her mother's primary caregiver. So it's you're following this woman as she's undergoing all of these internal struggles and stressors, and you know, it is a very interesting book to read because you've got what she's got going on and you've got the murder investigation, and it's super interesting to kind of watch this woman mentally unravel and also be invested in, okay, who killed this other person. So highly recommend it if you're interested in a good mystery. Again, nothing too crazy in terms of scary or anything like that. It just was a really good book. So highly recommend. For the month of May, so I am getting there, you guys. We are in June, so I am headed in the right direction. I'm hoping this is going to be another quick page turner, so maybe by July I will be where I need to be. But for the month of May, it was The Woman Who Heard Color by Kelly Jones. That was the one that was selected at the very beginning of the year. I'm really looking forward to reading this. It was just a thrift store find. If you're ever interested in knowing how I find the books that I read, you're looking at the dollar store, thrift stores, and then sometimes I'll just randomly open up the book section on Amazon and pick random stuff. So I have a very randomized book selection process because I'm pretty open, and I try to find things discounted or on sale because if I don't like something, I'm not going to force myself to read it. So yeah, those are my secrets. Don't tell anyone. But for books like this, I have provided links to Amazon for all 12 of the books that we're supposed to be reading for this year. So if you're a brand new viewer, it gives you an opportunity to purchase some of the ones coming up if you want to read along. If you're a returning viewer, I certainly hope you've decided to read some of these guys. I would really love to know if you've read any. Are you currently reading any? I'd love to chat. Definitely love to read, love to talk about books. It's a huge passion of mine. So again, for the month of May, it is going to be The Woman Who Heard Color by Kelly Jones, and I will hopefully be seeing you guys very soon for another book review. And again, I apologize for the delay. I am doing my best. Shanghai Girls really took it out of me, man. Just emotionally, that was a hard one to invest into. That's really no excuse though. All right, guys, thanks again for checking me out. I will see you next time. Bye.